Okay, great. So this is Google Analytics reporting. It's easier than you think. So if you're looking for something else, you are in the wrong place. Kind of what we'll go over today is sort of Google Analytics 4, an overview, reporting in Google Analytics 4 as it comes out of the box, Google Analytics 4 explorations, and then we'll talk about Google Data Studio, which is another visualization product out there that's commonly used with Google Analytics. So who am I? I'm Steven. I'm a director of consulting at Design Hammer. I've been using Google Analytics for over 15 years. I do oversee most of our client analytics stuff. I also do like some SEO, accessibility, strategy, usability. If it's not design or development, I probably have done a bit of it. If it is design or development, we try not to have me touch those because that's not where I'm good at. So I guess I'm wondering who I have in the room. Who here is like in-house at a large organization? Anyone? No. Anyone at an agency? Okay. Anyone kind of a freelancer, do their own thing? Cool. Students? Anything? Yep. Cool. All right. So who would say that they are, out of five being I'm a wizard, who is a 5-level comfort person with Google Analytics? 4?
Until GA4, yes.
Okay, heard. How about 3? Okay. 2? All right, and 1. All right. So got like kind of middle of the range. We've got some folks who have used Google Analytics to some degree. Has anyone ever said, I know the data is in there, but you don't know how to get it out? Yeah, I think that's pretty common, particularly now. So a couple of caveats and disclaimers. I'm not a developer, so if I go really off the rails and try to use some regex or something, I may get it wrong. I'm going to try to avoid that. This is an overview, so I could go into more depth on different pieces. Not trying to kind of orient you and kind of get you comfortable with each of the 3 different reporting views. Rather than do a deep dive, sometimes I rabbit hole, in which case I apologize. I won't cover Google Analytic event creation. That's its own thing. Happy to chat about those later. I will talk forever about this given the opportunity, and I'm not going to touch Google Ads or Looker or Search Console or really other things, just because 45 minutes. So, an overview. What is Google Analytics? It's a free web analytics service offered by Google. It's generally implemented by adding JavaScript to website pages, which is important because it can't track things if the page doesn't load. It's commonly added via a module in Drupal or tag manager or directly into the site theme code. The last major update was Google Analytics 4 that came out in 2020. Who here used Google Analytics before 2020? I know I did. It's way different in Google Analytics 4, but it's currently used by over 82% of websites whose traffic analysis tool could be determined by W3 Tech. So initially released October 2020. It's an entirely new model over Universal Analytics, which was GA3. It kind of focuses on engagement over page views and bounce rates. It's more event-focused. It's entirely incompatible with Universal Analytics. So like the concepts are different, the base data is different. So you can't really do any direct 100% one-to-one historic comparison between GA4 and Universal Analytics. And Universal Analytics was fully retired in 2023, whether you like it or not. So a couple of key concepts. GA4 has a concept of users. They do a couple of different ways of identifying users. One is if they assign a user ID, and that could either be assigned automatically, just based off of this is a user who Google Analytics doesn't recognize. It just gives them a user ID, or you can pass a user ID to GA4. So, for example, if you've got a logged in user and you want to pass an identifier to them, you can do that. That is supported. Google Signals, if someone in their browser is logged into their Google account, Google Analytics knows some stuff about them from that. The device ID, which is just auto-assigned. And then modeling. So one of the aspects of GA4 is it was, to some degree, trying to play nicely with GDPR. I think the EU would disagree that it does, but that's a separate topic. So there's a real world with Google's consent management integration through Google's consent mode, where you can have, if you've got a consent management platform, cookie banner, I want to opt out of cookies, that sort of thing, where you suddenly are missing a large section of your traffic because people are like, no, please don't track me. And then if you've got that configured correctly, you're not going to get a lot of the tracking that you would otherwise get. If you meet certain thresholds of traffic, both consented and unconsented, modeling is available to estimate your traffic. And so modeling is used also when it comes to users in Google Analytics 4 if you reach certain thresholds. You can kind of check that. If you look at a report, you may see a little green check, currently, a little green check mark. If you hover over that, it said modeling is enabled. Modeling has been turned on for your account. There's no way to turn that on automatically or manually. It will either be turned on or not. So that's just what that means. If I have had the conversation over time of like consent management, is it legally required for you? Great. Here's what it's going to mean for your analytics. That's just part of the conversation. GA4 supports 3 different ways of interpreting the user signal. One is blended, which kind of mushes all 4 of those things together and tries to kind of find overlaps and stuff. One is observed, which basically discounts any modeling. And one is the device only. Sessions. So a session is a single instance of a user interacting with a website. Basically, it starts when a user views a page or opens an app. It's triggered by the session start event. And it ends after 30 minutes of inactivity, basically indicated by the user stops clicking, scrolling, or viewing pages as part of that session. But you can configure that 30 minutes up or down, whatever you want. But if a user returns to a site within 10 minutes, it's considered part of the same session. As a note, rolling over midnight doesn't reset this, so that's just a relevance piece there. Events. So this is basically kind of the core of Google Analytics. For everything is an event, and it's basically giving you information based off of events that have fired, right? There are 4 categories of events. One are automatically collected events, which is page view and session start, a few other things. They're enhanced measurement events. So these are pretty useful things like file downloads, scroll, stuff like that. Turned on by default, you can turn them off, but they're not the same thing as automatic events because you can't really turn off automatic events, but you can turn off most of the enhanced measurement events. Then they have this library of what they call recommended events, which is basically, you can think of them as recipes for events that you can implement through other ways, and they're sort of designed to have at least kind of the same logical structure and may play a little bit nicer with reports. So, for example, a lot of e-commerce events are recommended events, so they play well with e-commerce reporting, that sort of thing. And then custom events. You can make your own. Events require an event name and may have parameters attached to the events. And generally, when Google Analytics receives an event, if it has an event name, it increments the account of that event for that session. And then if there are parameters, it also has those that are passed to it. Last, I think, major concept is dimensions versus metric. So a dimension is an attribute of your data. So it describes your data. It's usually text as opposed to like a number. Frequently, these are caused by events, so they often correspond to an event name. A metric is a quantitative measure, such as an average, ratio, percentage. Reports typically combine some number of dimensions and metrics. And then another concept is engaged sessions. So GA4 has this concept of engagement, which is basically a session is an engaged session if it lasts longer than 10 seconds, or has key events, or has 2 or more screen or page views. And then that's kind of rolled into a bunch of different metrics like engaged sessions per active user, engagement rate, so on and so forth. And you can adjust the engagement time. So let's talk about some reporting. So from a kind of nuts and bolts thing, when you first log into Google Analytics, you'll find a few different pieces. But at its base, you basically have reports and collections. So reports are individual reports, and collections are groups of reports. If you configure business objectives when you're setting up your property, you're going to get some collections related to those business objectives. If you don't, you'll get different stuff. You can add and remove collections and reports via the library. There are 14 predefined reports. They're here. I'm not going to read them all. These probably look familiar if you've been in Google Analytics a bit. And then there are default collections. So there's the lifecycle collection, there's a user collection, and then there are the business objective collections. So if you select drive online sales and understanding web and or app traffic, you get both of those collections in addition to lifecycle and user. So you can customize reports. And you might do that for a variety of reasons. Like this report almost does what I want. You can add or remove metrics or dimensions. You can change audiences. You can change the charts a bit, add some stuff, add or update summary cards. So let's take a break from this and customize a report. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go full screen here. Can folks read this enough to be oriented? Cool. All right, so if we go over here, we go to reports. We've got our lifecycle collection, got Search Console connected, and I've got the user collection here. Go down to library, and let's say, so I was thinking about what would be a kind of useful example to kind of play through this, right? So one thing that we might do, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Is that a little better?
I don't have my glasses.
All right. So one thing that I think people commonly want to know is I get traffic, and I want to know, let's say, if where the traffic is coming from, who's doing a contact form submission, right? So by default, there's not a great way of doing that. One thing might be because your contact form may be implemented in such a way that it doesn't line up with the enhanced measurement event for Google Analytics. Very common in WordPress, can happen in Drupal too. Another thing that could happen is you could get false reports because the enhanced event is just keying off of, hey, this is a form action, but search is a form action too. So that's not great. So I said, let's assume we want to add, so let's see, we already have a custom event. We want to add a custom event to our user acquisition. So I'll just go ahead and make a copy of this. I want to say user acquisition, contact form submission. And of course a typo. Great, so I'm going to say cool, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to edit this here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add a filter. So I only want to see stuff here that is a submission, right? So I want to only have stuff that's got an event name that exactly matches. And this one is form submission. So hit apply. And now I'm only seeing sessions, user acquisition, of ones that generate a event, that generate this specific event, form submission. So then go ahead and save that. Boom, pop on back, and let's say, okay, I want to add that to my life cycle. So edit that, and then I can go and pull this over. I think I want that in my acquisition, so I put that right there. Save that, and pop back over to my acquisition. I now have my new report here. That filter is already pre-applied, and we can contrast that with the normal user acquisition report. So that's kind of gives us a lot of the pieces there that we're looking for. All right. So then, why do we care? So are these good enough? So one reason you might do this is the person that needs to review this report, maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else, is going to be doing this in Google Analytics. So this would be a good place to do this. Another is if the report is close and you can kind of do a small thing like this, then this might be a good place for it. And can you drill down to the level of customization you want? Not always the case. So moving on to explorations, because I've been talking too much, I'm running low on time. Explorations are customizable reports that allow you to explore lots of different combinations of dimensions and metrics. And I think these are great for really ad hoc questions. Like, I have this random question. In my case, it's usually from a client. And I'm like, So I go to explorations for that. So there are a whole bunch of different types. We're just going to look at a free form and just kind of play with it. So explorations are over here in Explore. So hit freeform. The freeform by default is going to come with a bunch of different things kind of preloaded. We're going to just get rid of all that because I don't need any of that. All right, so I need to add dimensions and metrics to my report. So I can click Add a Dimension, and I'm going to add event name because I know I want to be able to filter by event name. And then I also want to add first user source medium because I want to say when this person first came to my site, how'd they get there? Where'd they come from? And then let's say I also maybe a little extra info. Let's go ahead and add some geographic stuff. Country, region, and city. Boom. All right. A bunch of dimensions. I need some metrics. So we're going to go with event count because, again, we're looking for just a specific thing, which is how many of this particular event did we get, right? So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add event name. Just double click on all these. I'll add them. Nothing will happen. And I add event count. And boom, now I've got some data. Now, not super useful because right now I've got to click as my primary event because it's just like it's just automatically sorting. So I'm just going to add a quick filter. I'm going to filter by event name. Exactly matches. Form submission. Boom. Now I get much more interesting stuff. Now, a couple of things here that are sort of worth noting. It's going to default to 10 rows. That's useless. And I can kind of make sure I'm doing some sorting here. And then it's also, you're going to be somewhat limited in the amount of time that you have access to data. And that's because raw data is only available for a certain period of time, default 2 months. And then basically gets aggregated in certain forms, so you're not going to be able to do this sort of free-form exploration for some questions over after some period of time. So this is great for, again, ad hoc, fairly recent stuff. You not uncommonly will run into stuff where it's like, I think I should be getting information here, and there's no data. But you can kind of play with this to say, I want to do last 90 days. Exactly. Ran into that. So let's say I want just last 30 days. That should be happy. Right? And so that's a way that we can look at this. And then we could add other filters. But you can see this is not great for like presenting this to a board or a non-technical person, right? It's really good for ad hoc. I need to get in there and figure something out. So there's a lot of limitations on this report. The user report or the user explorer, which we're not going to get into, that's built in if you're passing user ID. It sort of populates that report, but it really tells you very little that you might want to know, so you might have to kind of go backwards to figure that out. It's limited by dimension and metric combinations, which can be a pain. So you may not be able to answer the questions you want. Limited date ranges. And there's some really large limits on reports per user per property and number of events per query. And then there's no modeling data in these, right? So this is only measured stuff. So Google Data Studio, kind of the last piece here. Google Data Studio, until like last month, it was Google Looker Studio, and then a few years ago, it was Google Data Studio, so the king is dead, long live the king sort of thing. It's a free web-based data visualization tool. Supports a lot of different stuff. GA4 is what we'll look at, but a whole bunch of other Google stuff, non-Google things. You can run like a Google Sheet through here. Lots of things you can do with it. Basically, there are a few different pieces to it. The free Google Data Studio is no cost, has shareable reports between Google users. Google Data Studio Pro has some enterprise integrations with Google Workspace, but usually what this means is if I need to email dashboards, particularly more than one set of dashboards to different people, you need the Pro version. And you get that through Google Workplace. Previously, it was Google Looker Studio, Google Looker Studio Pro, and Looker. Looker is a high-end data visualization tool, enterprise pricing, not in any really related to Google Data Studio, other than it used to be named the same thing. It's a weird branding thing. Talked to Google reps about it. They tried to sell us Looker, and it's not even relevant. But they bought Looker, and they're like, hey, let's bring it all in. Now they're separating out. Big thing with any report is you're going to basically configure a data source. In our case, it's going to be Google Analytics 4. And then from there, you can kind of get your data and your metrics. Nearly 50 charts. Gives you a lot more flexibility on a presentation perspective than you would have for like explorations or, in my opinion, inside GA4. So it's nice, and you can have a lot of more charts on multiple pages. You can have filters, both on a particular chart or filter controls for a whole page. Gives you a lot of different pieces. Also, you can calculate things. So if you needed to add two numbers together or concatenate two dimensions, you've got a lot of different pieces that you can play with here. So let's build a dashboard. So we'll go ahead and create a new dashboard. All right, first thing I have to do, we need some data. So we're going to go ahead and connect to Google Analytics. And we're going to use the Design Hammer GA4. Boom. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to add some stuff. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and add a chart. And we'll kind of do just what we just did. So we'll add this chart here. Boom. Make it a little bigger. And we have event name already. Great. Let's add some other dimensions. So we'll add user source. Would help if I spelled things right. Source medium, like we had. And then we'll add country. We'll just basically recreate that report. Region. City. Boom. And then we need to have a useful metric, so we need event count. Boom. And then we'll just take views out because we don't need that. But now we still have all of these default events. So we need to add a filter, which again is pretty straightforward. So create a new filter. Filter, you have to name the filter. Only form events. So we include event name equals form submission. Boom. So right now, we kind of have something that's maybe a little better, but we can kind of do a little bit of stuff to make it a little more clean. All right, make it a little more readable. And then let's say, okay, that's kind of nice, but let's add some controls. So I'm going to add a control. I'm going to add a date range control. Boom. So now I'm going to go ahead and group these together. So I highlight both, hit Command G, make sure we're all using the same data source. We are. And now this control is grouped with this. So now as I say, okay, let's do a different date range. Boom. Apply, and I say sort by event count. I get more of that ability to sort by event count there. Then let's say, that's kind of nice, but I would like to maybe we want to have something else here. So I'm going to go ahead and add another chart. I'm going to add a time series. All right, not going to worry too much about that. Date and event count. Just make sure we got these all grouped together. Boom. And so now I have that event count. I need to make sure I've got my filter applied here. So make sure our filter is applied to the entire group. And boom. Now we have a custom report that I can say what I would like it to be and kind of shuffle around. This is very easy to share. You can do styling here. You can add other filters if you wanted to add like a filter by country or something like that. A lot of different pieces there. And pretty fast too. It took me 4 minutes to build that. All right, so pros and cons, it's free, it's flexible, it can be styled, shared with non-technical users. Still limitations on metrics and dimensions that can be charted, and these aren't always documented. Sometimes you just run into stuff that's annoying. And emailing reports still requires Data Studio Pro. So, kind of conclusion, hopefully you've got a better sense of some different tools that are available in the toolkit. All these are free. But GA4 reporting out of the box might not do what you need. If not, you can customize it. You can kind of do stuff. Explorations are best for ad hoc questions, quick research, and Data Studio. A lot of times we'll use that with our clients in the association space. Really commonly there's some staff and there's a board. So we'll talk to the staff about what do you need to report onto the board, give them a whole suite of dashboards, and then since those are all fed by data, no one has to redo stuff in Excel or anything like that. It's just like, cool, I just go, if it's the last 28 days, in March we need to report on this to the board. Boom, 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 it's already there. So, questions? I'm at time, but I don't think they'll kick us out for another 5 minutes. Yeah, well, hopefully that was helpful and you've learned a couple of things. If you've got specific questions, I'm glad to, again, talk about this at length. So thanks, y'all.